Good morning and welcome everybody to today's London Chamber of Commerce and webinar. My name is Victoria Jane and I'm joined today by my colleague Jenny Crouch from the events team, and we're delighted to welcome you here. You have just seen our launch of our new London Chamber of Community app. It's the world premiere, I'm pleased to say, of the video, so do let us know what you think of it, but we would urge you all to sign up to it. It's a great new platform to connect businesses, you can join groups, you can discuss all lots of different issues, find out about the Chamber's products and services. It's free to join, and we'll be posting links in the chat box as well as in your post-event emails, but please do sign up. Jenny.
Thank you, Victoria. Today's webinar will be the usual format, so it will be lasting approximately 45 minutes, and we will be having a presentation delivered by Nicholas Mayhew from Alembic Strategy. Then you'll have an opportunity to put some questions or comments to Nick by using the question facility. We'll have approximately 15 minutes for that. So without further ado, Nick, take it away, please.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Can I just check that you can see the screen there, okay?
Yes, we can, Nick.
Great. So thank you very much to you guys at the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry for welcoming me to give this webinar, and welcome everybody to the discussion this morning. I hope that you'll get involved. We've got a poll in a second just to get a feel for what everyone's views are on this interesting issue around the change to flexible. And what I'm going to do is introduce myself and a little bit about Alembic. Then I'm going to talk about the flexible revolution, what's changed forever and what's not changed. And then what I'm going to do is just walk through 7 leadership tips. Now, it's a huge subject and we've got maybe 25 minutes for content before we get to questions, so I can't hope to cover it all today, but I've picked 7 key items just to sort of run through with you from our client work and our experience and our research. And then I'm going to signpost you to some more sessions which will dig deeper, and just invite you to sign up for those if you wish to. And then we're going to take questions at the top of the hour. So a little bit about us. So Alembic is my business. It was founded in 2016, and what we do is help leaders and managers with growth and change. It's multi-sector, so clients come from pretty much all sectors, but we have a bit of a specialism around family business owners and private equity investors. For the latter, we do team assessment, leadership team assessment before they invest, and then we help their businesses hit the growth plans after that. I guess a key thing about us is that we work with people in teams, and we do facilitation, we do coaching, we do embodying new capabilities. That's a bit of a unique thing about us, which I'm going to mention in a second and explain. We spend quite a lot of time mediating conflict, helping people restructure, and then helping drive the change. And I guess all of that comes together from my background. So I'm the son of a psychotherapist. I was brought up as a Buddhist. And when I was living in a Buddhist center, I used to do rugby at a Welsh comp on a Monday afternoon, and then in the evening go back to the Buddhist center and do Tai Chi. And that was my first real eye-opening experience to the shift in energy you get from just working with your body, which is key to our practice. And prior to Alembic, I was an equity partner and a director at Price Bailey, which is a large professional services firm, also facilitator and a coach. So let's maybe go to the poll. Do you want to just launch the poll and just see what people's views are about flexible? I think we've got 3 questions. Just take a moment just to answer the questions. See what the results are. Have we got
Nick,
more?
Oh.
Go.
Nick, I'm just going to read out the answers to those polls there before we go on to the next one. So we've got, what's your 2 biggest worries? We've got loss of culture. 63% of people voted for that answer. And we've got 19% for supervision at home, right. 44% for loss of on-the-job training, 31% for loss of productivity, and 44% for managing different working arrangements. Going back to the first poll where there was just a single answer, what are your post-pandemic flexible working plans? Nobody actually voted for the first one, everyone back to the office, which is no surprise. But 17% voted for everyone working from home, and 83% voted for part home, part office.
Yeah, so some mix is the most common answer. Interesting.
I think we've got one more poll to launch.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, we're asking everyone to pick 2 answers for that. I think that most people that are going to vote have voted. So I will read out the answers there. So what are the 2 most important gains from flexible working? We've got 33% for global recruitment, 39% cost saving, 44% time saving, 6% using different time zones for more shifts, and 83% well-being.
Interesting. Well-being, top of the list. Interesting. Okay, great. Good to go. Thank you very much. So, right, we've got limited time, so I'm going to rattle through this, but the session's being recorded, so you should be able to get a video afterwards and be able to, just roll back through if there's anything that you missed. So just very quickly, want to walk you through this. This is the Alembic Matrix, and it kind of describes the stages people go through when they're thinking about change, which is what we're going to face here. So it's maybe a helpful model for you to think about. So if you look at the y-axis up, down, you kind of got 2 factors there. One is the level of change, so more at the top, less at the bottom. And at the same time, you'll see level of consciousness or awareness. So that's for the human side of it, more at the top, less at the bottom. And then on the x-axis, you've got for the business, more or less systemized, so less at the left, more at the right. And then for the human, more embodied, so more at the right, less at the left. And embodied means, I can just inherently do it. I can do it with my body. I don't have to think about it. So think about a great pianist, in the middle of a performance. They don't consciously play. They just play with their whole body. That kind of idea. When you get there, that's a skill really learned. And so people tend to sort of hit crisis where they find that the current setup isn't working. In order to get out of that, they need to move into change. So up the change spectrum into discovery, which is where you start to sort of really reimagine, re-envision, what you're going to try and do and get agreement around that. And once you've kind of brokered, a new possibility there, a new story, you've discovered a way forward, then you move into transformation, which is top right. So now we're starting to systemize the new process. Now we're starting to build that capability in our managers, our leaders, and our teams. So we're actually getting that competency from a business point of view right up there. But this is hard work. So it's still high consciousness and it's high change. When you're going through transformation, it's really the tough part. And then finally, when you've got all that kind of, done, you then move back down into what we call flow. So back down into sort of pervasive competencies within the systems and the people. And really the idea is to stay in that bubble there called success zone. So a bit of innovation and mainly in flow, but don't drift back into crisis. So that's the change model, just something to think about in terms of the stages you're going to need to go through to get all this done. So I thought I'd start with just 3 sort of totemic stories. I mean, every single story is unique, so I'm not trying to cover all bases here, but they kind of like, show up a few of the issues. So these are people that I worked with during the pandemic. Obviously, not their pictures, and I've changed the names, but Filippo. So Filippo, during the first lockdown, was living in a bachelor pad in London on his own. He was 6 to 8 weeks. He was literally isolated in his house. And he rang me one day, he's Italian national, and said, Nick, is it okay if I go back to Turin? Now, you remember Turin was like a big zone of the pandemic in the early days. And his parents had been away, but they'd managed to make their way back into Turin, and he wanted to go and be with them, just, for his well-being, for company. Now, prior to the pandemic, my answer would have been, you're crazy. No, we need you in. You're based in London. But it was such an easy answer. Just definitely go. All you need is wireless in your laptop. And he was able to work seamlessly and much more happily from Turin with no question. Next lady in the middle, this is Hannah. So Hannah, as we went into the pandemic, wasn't on furlough, but she was on performance review. So there were major issues with her performance, and it was quite difficult, quite fractious. And we needed to go through her performance review with her. But when we wanted to connect with her during lockdown, she was in the flat with flatmates. There was literally nowhere for her to go other than her bedroom for us to go through performance review with her, which we agreed. She was kind of in the end okay with that. She needed to do it. But, in a way, a gross invasion of privacy, and just begs the question about adequate working facilities, which separates the workforce pretty much in two. And that's a real challenge that we've all got to face. And then this last one is Martin. So Martin's main experience during the last, nearly a year is the arrival of his second baby girl. He was working from home throughout that time and saved 20 hours plus a week in commuting, which he was able to devote to family life, to being there for his new baby, for his wife, and also for his personal fitness, which he would never have been able to do, in non-working arrangements. So just huge advantage, which he just doesn't want to go back from. So 3, I think, really interesting stories which kind of shine a light on different aspects of all of this. And we just looked out at our client network, and the response we got back was very similar to you guys. Over 90% of business leaders when asked said that flexible arrangements were here to stay well beyond 2021, and they also saw this as the #1 benefit from the pandemic. Really interesting, the #1 benefit. Okay, so flexible working is here to stay, but there's one thing which has not changed. Humans, we're 200,000 to 300,000 years old. As a species, we're highly adaptive. That's due to the unique configuration of our body brain. And I don't know whether you know this, but we build over 2 million synaptic connections per second between birth and age 2.5 to 3, at which point we have over a quadrillion synaptic connections in our mind. That's highly adaptive. And from that point on, this plasticity, it adjusts to circumstances very, very quickly. So this neurome, which is what I call it, neurome, is highly adaptive, and it molds itself into new environments. It's a learning and an avoiding engine. And the 2 key functions are around activation of new connection and depression or suppression of connection, so avoidance. The main thing to remember is that high levels of feeling and behavioral repetition are the 2 vital things that create embodied skill. So high levels of emotion and repeated behavior. And oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, if we had a roller coaster ride on both of those things in this last year. So one of the reasons it's here to stay. So we all share also this thing called the vagus nerve. It runs straight from the root brain in 2 branches. The higher one goes straight to the heart and the lungs, and the lower one goes straight to our stomach and our viscera, and it's deeply sensitive to threat. It regulates the heart and the tummy response. So the most notable response we get from the vagus nerve is fear, where the body experiences in the heart and the tummy first, and it triggers that fight, flight, flee, fall or fold response. It also down regulates that response, and that opens us up to connection and to the pleasure of a shared experience of life. So this ancient critter with all of this kind of, wiring has just sashayed into a whole population of virtual and flexible. And we can definitely do that, but we need rules. Basically, we need rules. So some of the things that we've been seeing, which have been pretty pervasive. So, in addition to all the advantages, just a massive increase in anxiety. You guys probably would have come across that. I certainly have over the last year as a leader. A complete inability with some people to manage their time, and a sense of distortion. So time has just disappeared for some people, but no ability to self-regulate. and that loss of physical connection. So the big questions we've all got, how do we manage burnout? How do we rediscover the culture? I just kind of want to make a point here that, one of the key things about the office environment is that you can see it and sense it when you're there. And it's like a template for everyone on how to be. So the timing, the regulation around timings about when to be in, when to go home, when to take breaks, behavioral signals and clues, they're just automatically within the office environment. Now, with the loss of that, a lot of people who don't have that can't self-regulate. They have no ability to self-regulate. And there's a lot of people out there that are suffering from that. And then in addition, we lose 93% of our communication because that's all inherently in body language. So you can't see that through this flat screen environment. How do we replicate those water cooler moments? How do we manage our presence with each other? And then the big question is, how do I know my team are being productive? And how do I create high-performing virtual teams? Okay, so here are my tips. Now, whether you would resonate with them or not, okay, these are my thoughts, and we can dig deeper at another point. So number one, accentuate your presence and your connection. Now is the best opportunity for years to reimagine your model. And what I mean by this is your culture model, your social model. Time to be with each other is just really precious. I'm sure you're all feeling that. And that's not really about an office. It starts with this question of, how do we want to be with each other? So now is a great time because you've got latitude at the moment to redesign your future shared space in order to support your culture. So it's a great time to start thinking about that, starting to get ready to implement around that. Number two, use the 4-pillar influence model. Okay, so let's just walk through this. This is an old model, but it's really powerful. So number one is, without rapport, there is no communication. Barriers are up. So the first thing is to build rapport. Now, how can you do that in an online environment? Maybe before meetings, what you need to do is just slow up and let everyone connect. Maybe take a moment and some mindful breathing, or just take a pause at the start to let everyone just be there. Otherwise, you get this kind of jagged, kind of fractious, big screen environment, which some people love, but a lot of people find, really disruptive. Use all your senses. So really you need to find a way to spend time to really connect with people and build back up that sense of what's going on for them, more than just what's in the voice, what they're saying. So that needs time, and it needs time away from other people on the screen. Be flexible. So big question to all of you out there, how flexible are you? How are you feeling about some of this change? Do you like it? Does your body respond negatively to it? Are you okay with it? Just check in, because your flexibility will be having an impact on your response to others. And there's no one way to be successful online. So you have to be much more open in this environment to different people finding different ways. And the last one, bottom right, is that you will always bring people together powerfully by shared task, shared purpose, shared objective, shared goal. So bring people together in projects. And my shout out here is just take this model into the virtual environment. You will already have people who are great virtual influencers. You probably know who they are. They've been brought up on this stuff. They connect easily socially. They're really used to it. They teach, they connect, they organize, they're accountable. But do they know your vision for this? Do they know your culture? You are a significant influencer in their life. So you need to be talking to them so that when they're connecting with us in your organization, they are sharing and resonating that vision, that culture that you want to see. And that brings me back to this next tip 3, which is to raise our standards in communication. It's one of the biggest problems that we find as an advisory business. People are not good at this. So are you teaching listening skills, empathy? Where are you at with teaching emotional intelligence to your management team and to your people? Do you know your values? Can you explain your values and how they translate into behaviors? These things are really important templates so that team members know how to be within your flexible model. And if you haven't got that presence where they can just naturally see it and pick it up from their immediate neighbors and from the internal grapevine, you need this communication to be organized a little bit more, and to be more natural coming off a model. And when we were in the office, we could just pick it up. Great businesses have always needed to do this and have added presence in well thought out communication and teaching. So virtual coaching matrix, this is a powerful matrix. I just want you to run through this quickly and encourage you to think about it. So on the bottom, we've got level of capability. So to the right is high capability, to the left is low. And on the Y index, we've got level of enthusiasm. So low enthusiasm, high enthusiasm at the top. So let's just start by looking at the bottom right-hand corner. So these are people who are high capability, but they are low enthusiasm at the moment. So something about this environment isn't working for them. They're feeling lost. They've lost their energy. Maybe they don't regulate well without colleagues around. Maybe they feel isolated, other stuff going on for them at home, all that kind of stuff. So your job here is just to connect, to hear, to find out. Maybe you need to poll just to get that. And then you or your managers spend time with them just to work that out, to get that motivation, that enthusiasm back on track. How can you fix it? What can you do to help? Okay, bottom left. So these are people who are low enthusiasm, low capability. They haven't worked it out at all. They can't regulate and they're not sorting themselves out. So this is where you need to dive in and supervise. Supervision is hard skill in the office environment. How are you going to do it online? Well, you're going to need to connect. You're going to need to make that regulation happen. You're going to need to be much more closely involved with them until they get things on track. So supervision in this environment needs to be, much more attention. Going up, enthusiasm, you get to the train box. So these are people who are not yet embodying their skills. I just want to take your eye over to the left of the slide and just make this point that one of the revolutions here is that training is now online. Accountability for training is personal. Most of the people who get this just teach themselves instantly because they have the enthusiasm. They go to YouTube, they go to the videos, they watch these 5-minute videos, they get the skills, they practice. They just go do that. If your basic technical training is not yet online, that's something you need to think about and make sure that's happening. And what that does, because people will naturally use their enthusiasm, their accountability to get the core skills, you then need to take them up into that coach box, which is high capability, high enthusiasm. So your leader focus is hiring, for that enthusiasm, that readiness, that tech ready, that tech savvy, and then coaching people and motivating people to stay in the top right-hand box. Really helpful matrix just to take that into the new environment. And while you're thinking about that, maybe what you want to do is come back and just scatter your team across that matrix and just really think about, how are you going to tackle each of the cohorts across the different boxes. And that takes me back into this tip around embodied. So coaching and practice under pressure are the vital skill. Technical skills, social skills, management and leadership skills, they must come off the page. Learning methods need to be much more hybrid. So the technical learning and then the practice. And the key point here is heighten the emotion, because neuroscience shows us that when the adrenaline is running through the body, our memories are really forming strong connections neurally, and we then embody, we enact, we do, rather than just thinking and reflecting. And that's where you've got to go with all of this. Here is a really simple tip 6, prosaic tip. 1/3 of our neural energy is used up in visual processing, and there is a huge amount of distraction just staring at these screens. So turn it off. Turn off the video. Video calls are exhausting for people. And instead, what you want to do is just have the audio on, have a Groupon audio together, and then combine it with some of the wonderful modern collaborative applications. So here I've got Teams up, and the icon on the right, if you don't know it, is Miro, which is just a wonderful collaborative space. But that might be Zoom, that might be Slack, that might be Asana, that might be Planner, that might be Miro, anything within 365 environment, where you can come in together, you can see each other, you can edit, in real time together and just chat to each other. That creates teamship, in the virtual world, just really, really powerful once you've got your people in the right space and that motivation running, and can work incredibly effectively. And my final tip then is just to mention that this is the best opportunity in a generation to reimagine your vision, your purpose, your culture, and to pivot your model. Maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe standing still is the right answer, but have you considered it? Have you looked at the options? Have you thought about it? And what is the message you're telling everybody? And if you do need to do it, they need to know. So starting to sort of create the bones of that new story, where you're headed with this, you need to influence people and give them some sense of confidence about the direction of travel after the pandemic, where at the moment for a lot of us, it's incredibly busy. Our vision is really shortened with crisis and the immediate. somehow we need as leaders to break some time out of that to start to reimagine the future and start to talk about that with everybody to rebuild that culture and that sense of purpose. So 70% of projects fail, and that's because people don't believe in them, because we're not ready for them as a business, and we don't have the people or organizational skills to deliver on them. So those are the 3 tools that you need to really think about to get into that 30% success zone. People need to believe in it, so you need to talk about it. People need to be ready for it, so you need your planning underway, and then that capability factor, the systems and the personal competencies just need to be built up so that you can get started. So we couldn't possibly cover everything that's coming up in just these few minutes, but I'm just going to signpost you to some more. The big problems: many clients, managers and leaders have been incredibly busy. Few breaks, lots of worry, time management has worsened, focus has become very short term. And then, just overlay that with inefficient decision-making processes within the business and uncertainty in the environment, just really heightened it. So, what are we going to do about culture, communication, and place? How are we thinking about identity, belonging, brand, and how that motivates us, as part of a story? And then taking those 2 things together, how does that then feed into productivity, effective supervision, and then, the nirvana, high-performing virtual teams? And then what does that mean for me as a team member, as a leader, as one of your team members, customer, supplier, investor, self? What's my place? What's my place in the story? You need to think about all these things and start to build this sense of the new tale that we're going to live out over the next decade. So it's time to rediscover that vision, that story, and start to own the future. If you want to find out more about that, we have a series of webinars called Strategy Café. You paste that link in to your browser, you'll find them and you can register. And we're going to be spending some time digging deep in conversation on each of these headings over the next month or 2. And you're welcome to join us and just participate in the story. It's all free, and I hope it's just helpful. Okay, that's it. That's the end of that first part. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, questions. If you have a question for Nick, or indeed just a comment, please pop it into the question box and we will read them out. Nick, I think that well-being has always been important, but it's so much more now in the forefront, isn't it? There's 2 things that sort of, I think, working. You've got well-being, and then you've got on the other side fear, haven't you? Is fear something that, should we embrace fear to an extent, because it is there?
Yeah, my view on this is there's no such thing as an unemotional human, right? And while everyone is looking, to avoid emotions, it's a kind of a bit of a zeitgeist in business to avoid emotion. I think it's flawed as an approach. Emotion brings both the highest level of competency. For example, if you think about again, a pianist on stage, or a great speaker, or a singer. They work with emotion to weave the tale and bring people with them. So using your emotion with confidence is key to great leadership. At the same time, you're on the edge of incompetence, because overwhelmed by emotion, your body goes out of control, and suddenly you're ineffective. The avoidance of the topic of fear, pleasure, pain, all those strong feelings means that we don't get competent at them. And actually, in our teams and amongst certainly the leaders and managers, we really need to build that competency. It absolutely gives people an edge. And the ability to understand that, if you can't understand fear and what it is and how it's affecting people, how are you supposed to empathize with and help your team? How are you supposed to supervise them? How are you even supposed to pick up on it that it's a problem? And when these higher arousal feelings are in play, people can't concentrate, and they certainly can't work effectively. So it's just crucial to go there, and definitely we should embrace it.
We've got a question here, which is, what are your top tips for supervising people?
In the online environment, I think supervision is incredibly hard anyway. A lot of people find it very difficult. It requires the bravery, the courage to be direct. At the same time, you've got to build rapport. And typically in supervision, you're in that bottom left box in the coaching matrix. So people can be both low enthusiasm and low skill and really struggling. So I think, normally that's challenging for people, and you need to tune in to the individual and find that balance between, pushing them quite hard and then helping them, supporting them. Giving people shorter term goals and much more specific tasks. And then the online environment, really it requires a little bit more effort. So I think the first thing to do is just to, realize that supervision is needed quickly, pick it up. And then, you or your managers need to connect with the individual online. And my suggestion is the first thing you do is you just connect and you just talk about it. And you just open up and listen and ask questions and really find out, spend time online with them. And this is a screen up conversation, not a screen down conversation, because you want to be connecting and you want to be building rapport. You want to be picking up on everything. And so it's your questioning practice time at this point, just digging deep and finding out specifically what's going on. And then I think, my tip is always then be flexible, because what works for you doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. And so the interesting question to ask is, well, what would work here? And to try a few things out. It's trial and error. And you've got to work on two sides, right? So you've got to work on their core competencies, and you've also got to work on their emotional connection to it. And I think it can be demanding here. So it's really important to set excellence goals when you're in supervision and raise people's eyes to the standards that are expected and make sure they understand, what they're supposed to be meeting in their role, whether it's on the emotional side, or on the technical side. So that would be my advice. Just spend time on this. It's the hardest box to get people out of, for sure.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question in from Maria, and actually just sort of follows on from what you're saying there. Is that, are businesses reducing performance expectations during the pandemic, especially for staff with young children?
Are they reducing performance expectations? Gosh, I don't think so. But I think it's really complicated. One of the really interesting things about this flexible, and like the whole of the population going on to flexible, is this, you could call it an invasion of privacy, but I guess another way of putting it, which is more positive, is seeing the whole person. And I know that the best of us was always interested, we were always finding out, but now literally you can see into everyone's houses and see what's going on. And I think that openness to allowing people to find their own way to be productive is amazing. And I think getting your eyes on it, getting the visualization of it is really helpful, because you can start to see the problems live that people are having. So we as a business have always been flexible. And we're services, and it's a sort of it's a postgraduate business, if you like. So I guess that's the culture that we're in, and I expect people therefore to be naturally accountable, although they don't always manage that. They sometimes do have problems with that. But I've always found that if I don't worry about the concrete office hours culture and instead allow people to work through their own way to be productive, that flexibility has always led them to perform better and to be more accountable. I've never had any problem with anyone missing anything through giving them more latitude to work when it suits them. And actually it brings people into working at parts of the day that suit them that you wouldn't normally have in this kind of like 8:30 to 6, 9 to 5:30 culture. It opens up business to people who can't do that, who could never do that. And we used to agonize about whether we could have these sort of part-time roles, for people who are somehow excluded from, the normal working practices. I just think this is just opening all of that up. So my own experience of this is that greater levels of performance are possible. And, people will bring that to you naturally. In terms of my own view on this, I think, we set our expectations around excellence, and we're always working to improve on those. And that's a key part of the business relationship. I don't think there's any reason to water that down or to be doubtful about that. You should have high quality standards for everything that you want to do. It's just absolutely key, and it's part of the business contract. So I don't think that goes, personally.
Thank you, Nick. We've got questions coming in thick and fast, actually, so we'll see if we can get through them all. My team has grown in the last year. I've not physically met all my joiners. The good news is that all but one seem to get where I want to aim the team to go.
Amazing.
However, do I get the one guy who is very productive and competent, but thinks most of this is a waste of time to come on board?
What's a waste of time? I can't work out what the question is. Sorry.
He wants hang on. It's the aim, basically, where he's taking his team. Everyone's on board apart from this one chap who thinks it's all a waste of time in terms of I think it's the team's aims, objectives, and goals.
He sees the team's aims, objectives, and goals as a waste of time.
Sounds from the question that I'm reading here, seems like it, doesn't it?
But it may be productive anyway.
He is very productive and competent, but thinks most of this is a waste of time, of his time.
Yeah.
If you're thinking back to your model, the capability is there. And I don't know if you had one for attitude on there, but perhaps attitude is in the minus section there.
You're going to meet everyone out there, right? And so this is the point about flexibility in the influencing model. So the question here is to the leader, how flexible are you? Is it essential to you that everyone in your organisation gets the goals and agrees to the goals and understands the importance of that? People tune in to motivation from all sorts of angles, and it's not always about the social constructs of work, but if they are productive and it's working okay, then what's the issue there? I think there may be issues and you may come up against problems. So my shout would be to just tune into that person and find out what is their motivation. There's plenty of surveys that you can do to actually get to that, and what motivates them is already opening up their capabilities, already opening up their resourcefulness. There may be an issue in relationship, in the sense that because they have that negative mindset around team goals and what have you, that's causing ripples, problems in relationship to other team members who are motivated around that. And so if that's true, there is an issue there that needs to be unraveled a little bit, and they maybe need some help around how they relate. So maybe some work there, but it depends really. And I would say flexibility here is key.
So we just had a bit more information from Michael, who asked the question. Motivation is not needed, he says. This is the employee. He thinks a lot of my chats and the chats of other seniors is a waste of time.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, how does he feel about that? It's an interesting question to go back, provided it's working. So the question is, what's the problem? Is the problem that he doesn't feel like he's getting connection with this person, or is there an actual business problem somewhere else? What is the problem that he's trying to solve? Is that just in, my relationship should be better? Or is this actually a productive relationship and it's okay? So if there is a problem, then yeah, you need to talk more and try and fix that. And we call it the gestalt, just name it and then try and get to the bottom of it. But you need to be open to the other person to find out what's going on there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we've got another question in from Elizabeth. So Nick, so what would you suggest for colleagues who struggle to communicate online? With body language being removed in the virtual world, misinterpretation can be common. What do you do to address this? Or do you just need to accept that some will ruffle others' feathers?
No, I don't think that's okay. I think that in normal circumstances, people they come together through the knocks and bruises of social interaction. So in a room, you may upset somebody and you get to be there with them and see them be okay about that a few minutes later. You can take a break, get a cup of tea, and it's all fine, and you can smooth over the cracks. I mean, online, my experience, and I'm sure it's shared, is that it's really, really tough. When someone gets triggered by something someone says because they haven't understood and they've missed out on context or whatever, just this environment, there's a lot of emotion. There has been a huge amount of emotion at times this year where people have been really dealing with crises. And poor communication online is a educational need. It is a fundamental skill set that we need to be teaching everybody in order to cope well in flexible. We need to work harder, all of us, around those sharp edges of relationships where the communication is limited like this. There's plenty that people can do, and you need to engage them with it and teach them it. And then, as I was saying earlier, they need to role play, rehearse, and embody it. They need to understand the problems it causes. And we should have programs for improving emotional intelligence and good tips and techniques for how to be with each other online so that doesn't happen. Because the last thing you want is to upset someone, get them to drop out of a call, and then just not know, the impact that that has on the rest of the meeting. Everyone will know this, is really tough to get the emotion back in the room and people feel good about it. Everyone's worrying about the person that's gone. So yeah, no, I think these skills have to be addressed.
Yeah, we don't have the luxury of being in a physical meeting where if someone said something that you could misinterpret or take it, if it's a bit ambiguous, you're not sure whether it's it's going to upset you or not, or whether they mean what they're saying. You have that minute afterwards or 30 seconds where you can have a chat with them whilst you're making a coffee and just say, I just wanted to check what you said. We don't have that opportunity now, and with people being muted once they've said their piece, and it goes on to the next thing. And meanwhile, someone's offended and someone's worrying about that for the rest of the day potentially.
Yeah, and I think, it can actually just be really helpful to take down the video, because what does it do? It tunes people into their ears. Visually looking at things is great, but in this environment, there are so many distractions. You can see yourself, you can see others, you can see around them, you can see lots of moving shapes. It's not like it is in a meeting where it's kind of like a 3D fluid environment. It's a set of TV screens. It just doesn't work in the same way. So take this, don't make everyone stay on video, just get the videos off, and then, chair the meetings properly. You need to have some discipline, some regulation when you've got a lot of people on a group call, so that you don't get that clash of audio and people can hear properly. And also that people get time to properly listen and respond to what's being said. There's some really good practices, like, when you start a meeting, just have 3 minutes of mindfulness and just ask everyone to relax, look at everyone, come into the meeting, be present, and then say, okay, let's get going, and turn the video off, and then everyone can just listen. And you're looking for interaction, so just chair well. So there's some simple skills there which really massively improve the efficiency of meetings. And if people are struggling and you have to work harder on that, check in with them offline and talk to them about how to be in these meetings, because it's a whole new world. You just can't expect people to get this naturally. They need to be taught. It's not easy to pick up these skills, especially people who experience strong feelings, and are easily triggered about one or two things that are going on, for whatever reason that might be. So yeah, we need to work on this, definitely.
And as a leader yourself, how do you avoid burnout? Is mindfulness a tool that is one of your main tools to try and sort of avoid that?
Sort of. So I see mindfulness in a slightly different way because of my long years of experience. I remember my dad meditating in 1973. Gives you a bit of a clue as to my name, and getting annoyed because he couldn't meditate and telling us all to shut up. It's quite funny from a mindfulness point of view. So how can I have this kind of amusing, slightly cynical view of the whole thing? Having been brought up in a Buddhist center, if you know what I mean, you kind of it's the meat and drink of life there. So so really what's going on with mindfulness is tuning back into your body. When you pay attention to your breath, you're paying attention to something that is autonomic and unconscious. And so what it does is it lets the mind focus a little on the natural rhythm of your body. And if you can do that, which not everyone can do, and there's lots of different ways of doing it, what that does is it just distracts your mind from this terrible rumination, self-talk, etc. And so that's where you find that place of peace. But some people have got discomfort in their body, so actually mindfulness just makes them realize they're in pain. So it's not the complete solution. In reality, what people need to do is find a mix of physical practices that builds their energy. We call them micro practices or atomic habits. There's a book by Charlie Duhigg which talks to this atomic habits. So little things that we do all the time. Spacing your day, having discipline around your meetings, not going from call to call, taking the screen time down, and using your body in different ways to re-energize, making sure you eat, making sure that, given there's so many challenges and stresses and strains in life, making sure that you bring into your life the positive emotions, joy, pleasure, humor, fun. You've got to work to bring those in if you don't naturally have them, as a counterpoint to the natural challenges that we face all day long. So balancing those things out, I find just really helpful. And then the one thing I do think that mindfulness gives us, I sometimes call it the self-editor or the librarian, or maybe there's the God of self. It gives you the ability to find the voice which is observing self, and that can be, untrained, that can be a terrible critic and make you feel awful. But, properly released into its neutral role and a kind voice in your mind, can be just incredibly helpful for helping you develop your competencies and grow as a person. And mindfulness will do that, because what it tends to do is calm that voice down, so it's less of a critic and more helpful. So there's a complicated answer, I'm afraid, but built on years and years of experience. And personally, I find mindfulness really good, but also Tai Chi or Qigong, or going for a run, or being on my bike, or having a swim, or just walking in the trees, and just moving from room to room. So basically anything which is movement to my body and gives me a chance to just focus on my physical self, gives me a break, and allows me to recharge. And any of those things can work. You just need to find the right mix for you. Is my view.
So Libby says, I love this suggestion about turning videos off to improve communication. We've been operating under the presumption that video improves communication. So it is good to have that presumption challenged and think of situations where turning the video off might be more suitable.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. And I think, Victoria, we often have meetings where the video has to be on, but actually it's worth turning that on its head and thinking sometimes it is just better to just have audio only, and use different formats and different softwares to have meetings. So no, that's fantastic.
It's key to high performing virtual teams. What you'll see them doing is they'll have 2 or 3 screens up with different collaborative software on. They're all engaged in the different tools they're using to develop stuff. They can see what's, so a bit like a desktop at work, they can see what everyone is doing, but on the screens. So having multiple screens is really important. Having a good environment, a comfortable environment at home is really important. And then the audio is part of that. So you have your audio, so you can have shared voice. But you don't have to look at each other. You can always turn to the screen and say, can I just check in with you for a second? If you feel someone's, unhappy, or you want to just, so I use that. I use it for that. I would put the screen on to look at somebody, smile at them, show them that I'm okay, and check in with them they're okay. And once that's okay, just turn off again, back to the voice, and just so use the visual for connection, and use the audio for work. And look over here at the screen with the audio on, and look at you on the screen to connect with you, to feel empathy, to check in with how you are. So that personal connection, that intimacy is the video, otherwise turn it off. But you do want to engage, so you want to just make sure that there's a leader there that's pulling people into the conversation, that people are engaged, so that, again, that's a skill, going out to the group and asking them to be participants in the conversation is really, really important. Sorry.
I think we are slightly running over, so we are going to have to wrap it up.
Okay.
If anybody had any questions that we haven't got to, or they've got specific questions for Nick, we will be sending you an email after the event where we'll be circulating Nick's details. And a few people have commented just to say, can they have the link for some of the events that you're running yourself? So I'm sure if there's any resources, Nick, or a link to anything specifically, if you can share that with us, and we will share it with everybody attending for the post-event email. And I think
I'm just trying to find a slide for you just quickly. It'll be in the slides, and we'll circulate it around. Yeah. So where did I put it?
Perfect.
Here. So at the bottom of this slide, you've got a paste in link, and then my contact details are here.
Perfect, and we will share that. We will share that on the email as well. And if anything has specifically struck a chord with you, the audience today, please do let us know, because if we ask Nick nicely, he might run another webinar for us, whether it's on mindfulness or something specific where we just want to do a deep dive into a topic. I think that we've just scratched the surface today, and there's definitely sort of more scope to hear from Nick. So thank you very much. Couple of events which I just need to mention that we've got coming up. First thing to say is we are running a variety of events. Have a look on our website, londonchamber.co.uk/events. We are running briefings, we are running virtual networking, we are running webinars, and even more than that. So a couple of things that are coming up. We have a webinar on Wednesday, the 24th of February, starting at 10:45 AM, which is entitled Home Working Best Practice. And we have another one on Thursday, the 3rd of March, starting at 2 o'clock, which is entitled Thriving After Redundancy, Top Tips and Advice to Help Manage the Transition. Hopefully I will be seeing some of you later on, because we have a members only virtual networking event. So hopefully I'll get to see and catch up with some of you soon. But I think that's probably it from us, except to say, if you haven't downloaded the new Chamber app, please do so, because we will keep harping on at you until you do. Nick, thank you very much, and we will see you soon.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for tuning in. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.